Hey, hi everyone. Welcome back. So guys, as part of the previous session, if you look at your code, basically, we have created a basic program that will be opening that particular application, right? Now, what are we going to do here is starting from today, we will try to interact with a particular web element. See, a simple example for this particular one is consider that you are on a application. So the application that we have opened here is a source demo. So consider that you are on a source demo screen itself, wherein which it has the username and a password fields. If you look at it, basically it does has the username and a password fields. Now, once you are done up to here, which is writing down this particular code to open the application, now you need to perform interaction with the field. Maybe you need to enter a value to the username field, or you need to enter a value to the password field, or you need to click on a login button. These kind of an operations we need to perform. So ideally, all the elements, all the options that are displaying on the UI, okay, all the options that are displaying on a UI, consider that. So we have a text fields here. These are two text fields. This button, maybe there are some checkboxes, radio buttons, all those things. There should be a mechanism for our automation testing to interact with it, right? To go interact and perform operations on it. So that itself the key concept for today, which is an locators. So how exactly any automation tool will go and interact with this particular UI elements. All those elements we treat them as a web elements. Username field as one web element, password field as one web element, automation login button has a one web element. Ideally, from our automation testing, we will be interacting with this particular web element. So you need to write down a program in such a way that go to this particular source demo application, identify this username text field, and then perform some operations on the same way. Identify the login button and perform some operations on that. So how this is going to work? So from a theoretical perspective, the simple term here is your automation code, you need to write it in a way that go to the source demo, identify an object and perform that operation. How are we gonna achieve this particular activity? So for each and every element here, we have a corresponding HTML attributes are there. Ideally, document object model, which is a DOM, is a programming interface for any kind of a web documents. Your automation tool, we as an automation tester, will be capturing the various HTML attributes for the individual elements, and we need to pass those elements to your program. So let me show you a simple example. So on the username text field, I'm performing a right click, wherein which I was just picking this inspect option. Okay, as in when I clicked on that inspect option, see here an elements basically in which, okay, if you look at this particular elements, so if you look at this particular area, this is in a highlighted mode. Okay, this is in a highlighted mode, right guys? If you look at it, whenever you perform a right click inspect, see here, let me close this one, right click on a username field, inspect. Whenever I have inspected that, see the highlighted information that's being highlighted, and whenever I mouse over on that, the respective object in the browser is getting highlighted, with which we can say that this is a set of information that it is associated to that particular object, to that particular element. So if you observe, okay, that's fine. So let us study about this particular one. If you observe this symbol right after this particular word, okay, this we can call it as a HTML tag name. For this particular text field, the tag name is an input. So maybe for some other object, the tag name is an input. For some other object, the tag name is a form. For some other object, the tag name may be a, something like this. Okay. So those are the different HTML tag names that you have on a particular web page, followed by a tag name. If you look at it, basically class is an attribute and its associated value is in a double quotes. The same way, placeholder is an attribute and its associated value is in a double quotes. type is an attribute and its value is in a double quotes. Data test, again it's an attribute and its associated value. Like that, there are multiple attributes are there, and for all those attributes there are some associated values are there. And if you look at this particular value, we don't have any value for that. There is just an attribute, it doesn't have a value. So the ultimate point here is, right after performing a right click operation and inspecting it, you will be finding a bunch of HTML attributes and their associated values. You will be picking up one value and you will be using in your program. So here consider that I'm picking up the ID attribute. Okay, I'm picking up the name attribute and directly I will write down my program. So I'm picking up my placeholder, I'm picking up my class name. All these things are the individual attributes that we will be picking up, and we will be writing down our code stating that we will ask our program, go to the browser, identify an element by using its ID attribute, and then perform the desired action, whether it is entering a value into the text field, performing a click operation on a button, image, checkbox, radio button, selecting a value from the drop down, check whether it is visible or not. All those things. The key thing here is object identification is the key thing here. Okay, perfectly all right. And if you look at this particular class name, it does has, let me highlight this particular class name. So if you look at this particular class name, this is a one attribute of a class and this is the second class name. See, there is a space in between. There is a space in between. This is a class 1 and this is a class 2. We can go with the either of this particular class names and we can identify it, or we can give a full class name and you can identify it. That's fine. So that's fine. These are the various chunks. Okay, perfectly all right. So this is all about the background, guys. Okay, this is all about the background. And moving on to our playwright. So playwright is having a different mechanisms to identify. If an object is having an ID, you will be representing hash. Okay, if an object is having an ID attribute, or if a web element is having an ID attribute, so you can use page dot locator class. This is from your playwright itself, where in which you will be using a hash in front of that ID, so that your playwright can understand, okay, this is what my ID property is, and it will try to identify a web element in the page using this ID property. If you want to identify using a tag name that I have shown you earlier, directly you can put it here so that it will consider it as a tag name. If you want to identify using a class name, directly you can use a dot followed by a class name. If you look at these three, for ID you need to put a hash, for tag name you no need to put anything, for class name you need to put a dot. Okay, consider that you have an object which is having a placeholder. In such cases, you will be defining a braces inside that placeholder, and its associated value should be placed in the double quotes. Not only this particular one, we can also club all these things. See here, ID followed by a class name followed by a tag name. We can club all these things into an individual locator. And if at all you have an XPath, you can pass on that particular XPath. We haven't studied anything about this XPath now. We will be studying about this XPath moving further. And if the object is having a text, you can pick either of these three mechanisms to identify that. Okay, that's perfectly all right. Let us see a simple example with all these things. So let me pick with an ID. So here, let's go back to the source demo application, where in which right click, inspect this element. This element is having an ID. So let's come back to your program. I'm creating a new test. Okay. Interact with the elements. Okay, dot spec dot ts. Okay, that's fine. And whatever the basic test is there, I'm just copying the test from the yesterday's program and I was just putting it here. Okay. uh, Interact with the username and a password. That's the test that I have created. That's the test I have given a name. Okay, async and await that we have already discussed yesterday. Right now, what I'm doing right now here is page dot locator. So locator is the class basically page dot locator. As part of this particular locator, if you look at that particular username, you need to use a hash username. The value associated for that username is here, this one. Come back to the program. So in the single quotes, see, as and when I was trying to write, my Copilot is prompting me the suggestions. I don't want to use it. So here, hash username, this is the thing. I don't want to perform any actions, guys. I just identified that. So, guys, if you remember the previous session, whenever we mouse over on a goto, we have a notice that the goto is having a written as a promise. That's the reason we need to use a await as a mandatory. And I have also told that if some command is not returning any promise, we no need to use an await. So here, if you look at this particular locator, it doesn't have any return type as a promise. Hence, I am not using a await here. Okay, hence I am not using await here. So this is the way how to identify an object, identify an element using its ID attribute. Okay, ID attribute. This is the way. Perfectly all right. And then the next one here is once we have identified with an ID, the next one is using the tag name. See, in general, what is the HTML tag name? We have seen that the tag name is this is the one, right? So the tag name for this particular object username field is an input. So here directly I'm specifying identify using tag name. Okay, page dot locator, and that particular object is of course having an input tag name. My copilot is prompting, so I was just accepting it by using a press tab button. Perfectly all right. So I just identified using its a tag name, and then the next one is using a class name. See, that object is having a space as said that we can consider it up to here as a class 1 and we can consider it up to here as a class 2. So I'm considering it as a form input right now. Okay, I'm considering it as a form input right now. Let's come back here. Identify using class name. Okay, whenever you want to identify using a class name, so page dot locator, my copilot is automatically prompting that I can accept this one, or I can also use page dot locator, so I can put this particular class name too. As said that it was split into two class names using the space. That's the way I can define it. Consider that I don't want to split it, so I just want to give the full class name. So whenever you want to use a full class name, in such a cases you will be using this attribute symbol. Okay, so identify using its full class name attribute. Okay, using its a full class name attribute. See here, automatically my syntax is being populated. Okay, my copilot is prompting me that page dot locator in the single quotes open braces, you need to specify the class name. That's the valid locator itself. I'm just pressing the tab button. Okay, I was just pressing that particular tab button. Perfectly all right. So here we have a used ID, tag name, class name, and the attribute type using that particular class name. Consider that this object is having a placeholder. I just want to use this placeholder using this attribute. Okay, identify using attribute with placeholder value. Okay, using it's a placeholder value. Say automatically my copilot is prompting me that suggestion. So page dot locator, and here in the single quotes you need to specify this. So which is placeholder equal to username. That's it. I have defined this particular username. I don't want my password. Perfectly all right. So if you look at this particular document, we have identified using an ID, it's done. Using a tag name, it's done. Using a class name, it's done. Using this particular any attribute, it's done. So let us try to identify using multiple locators or a multiple attributes, I can say. So let us combine here. Identify using multiple attributes. Okay, identify using a multiple attributes. So page dot locator. Okay, page dot locator. So first of all, my first locator that I have used is an ID. So I just copied my ID, come back here, put it ID. So we no need to use any space. So directly I was using my class name, put it here. I just want to use this one as well, copy it and put it here. So these are the multiple attributes. We are asking our automation tool to identify an object by using this, which is an ID property, the class name, and as well as a placeholder. All these three. It will try to identify an object with all these three attributes. Okay, with all these three attributes. What else we have from this particular document? XPath we will be studying later. The next one is a text. So text that it is displaying on an object. See, basically, if you look at it, basically, the text that it is displaying for us here is a login button. And it is there as part of a value. If you look at this particular value, this value is also having a login. Okay, so what I'm gonna do right now here is I just wanna identify using its a text, and the syntax here is this one. So here, identify using text. Okay, identify using a text. So page dot locator, and here I'm gonna use text as my login. So identify a particular element in the web page using this particular login as a text. Okay, and also page dot locator, still I want to go with its text itself, but the point here is I want to verify using a has a text. So here has a text, basically this is what the login is. And the same way, page dot locator, and it has a text, and there is a one more attribute that we have, which is a text is. So here page dot locator, and the text is, okay, the text is, this is the one that I have specified. All these are the various attributes using which you can identify that. See, if you look at it, basically the text on this particular object is a login, the same text I was just specifying here. These are the various ways how you will be identifying an object. So guys, if you observe right now, we are just identifying here. We are not performing any actions on that particular object. So actions means for the username field, what you need to do, for the password field, what you need to do, for the login button, what you need to do, all those things that we will be studying as part of our next section. But this is a basic intro about the locators, how you can identify any particular element in a web page. Okay, perfectly all right. See you again in the next lecture. Thank you.